Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Please hit the like, it does really help and I truly appreciate every like that I get. It helps me know what to bring to my channel, what you like and what you don't like. That's what it's there for at the end of the day, and I appreciate it if you could use it. Anyway, so we're still on Icelandic folk tales. We've just done the tales of Saemunda the Learned, and we're now on tales of the Reverend Erikúr of Vogsosar. Numerous tales are told of the Reverend Erikúr, the best ones coming from his home, the district of Selvoga in the southwest. According to those who knew, Erikúr was eccentric and learned, but his name was pronounced many a way. It was Erikúr, Erikúr, Erikúr. Frequently, he would enter the hills. He was eccentric and he was learned in magic, so the hills, they did appease to him, and many other strange things, but he actually never harmed anybody with his knowledge. He was not above playing practical jokes, especially if provoked, but he never harmed anyone. Magical, eccentric, yes. Entering places that he shouldn't, yes. Practical jokester, yes, but only when provoked. But he never harmed. It was Erikúr's custom to disappear from his parsonage every Sunday night and not to return again until Sunday morning. How bizarre. No one ever knew what he was doing during these absences of his. How Erikúr learned magic in school. In the district of Biskupstungr in the south, there once was an old eccentric cotter who didn't much mix with other folks. Two things in his possession he valued more than anything else: a book, whose contents no one knew, and a heifer, which he fed, and he fed it religiously. The cotter contracted a severe illness and sent word to the bishop of Skalholt, asking him to come and see him. The bishop, thinking he might persuade the old man to repent his sins, reacted quickly and went to his bedside. "It so happens, sir," said the cotter, "that I am about to die, and I want to ask a small favour." The bishop said he would listen. "I have here a book," continued the old one, "and a heifer I am very fond of, and I want both to be buried with me, or else there will be consequences." The bishop promised this would be done, for he was afraid the cotter would otherwise return to haunt him. Then the old man died, and the bishop had him buried with the book and the heifer. A long time after this happened, 3 youths at the school of Skalholt began to study black magic. One of them was named Bogi, another Magnus, and the third Erikúr. They had been told of the old cotter and his book, and they wanted very much to get hold of it. So they proceeded one night to raise the old man out of it. His very grave, to come up. The trouble was that no one knew exactly where the grave was. They finally resorted to calling up all the dead, row by row, and filled the church with ghosts. But the cotter wasn't among them. Putting these to rest again, they filled the church the second and third time, at which point only a few graves remained now, for they had gone by and called up every single ghost near enough. Still, the cotter wasn't there. When they had put all these into the ground again, they conjured up those who were left. Finally the old cotter appeared, the very last, holding the book under his arm and leading the heifer. The three young men all set on the old one at once, trying to get at the book. But the cotter reacted vehemently, so they had their hands full just defending themselves. Nevertheless, they managed to tear off a part from the front of the book, and that in hand, they decided to abandon the fight for the remainder and put all the ghosts back to rest. They succeeded in doing this. That is, all except the old cotter. Desperately seeking to regain his book, he would not be controlled, but the youths held him off, which was all they could do until dawn. As day broke, the cotter returned to his grave. They recited their formulas over it, and the old man never since made his presence felt. The three comrades used the pages they acquired to compose the book of magic, named Greyskin, which was long kept on the classroom table at Skalholt. Its chief author was Bogey, for he was by far the most advanced of them. All three of them were ordained as ministers. Erikúr became the parson at Vogasotha, but the others, well, beneficers have them married and taken away to different places. However, Magnus wooed and married Bogey's fiancée, and when the latter learned of it, he set off to see Magnus. But Magnus knew he was on the way, and he also knew that if Bogey set eyes on him first, it would be his death. So Magnus went to his church, where he hid behind the door, and instructed his servants to tell Bogey upon arrival that he was not after saying his prayers. He was at his altar, his special altar, and not to be disturbed. Bogey went to the church and stepped into the middle of the aisle, where Magnus saw him first and bid him welcome. Bogey responded with good cheer, and when he left again, Magnus saw him off. In parting, Bogey took a flask out of his pocket, and he threw the contents into Bogey's face. This was Magnus that had done that, and he instantly fell down dead. Magnus thereupon returned home, and nothing more is said of him. When Erikúr learned all this, he was startled and said, "Ah yes, my pet," which was his customary address. We were all children compared with Bogey. Although the companions had tried very hard to hide their learning in magic, the rumour soon spread that Erikúr was a sorcerer. The bishop therefore summoned him in a meeting and showed him the Greyskin volume and asked him to state if he knew at all any of the book's teachings. Erikúr leafed through the book and said, "I don't know one letter in it." On this he took an oath and then returned home. To an acquaintance of his, he later explained that he knew every letter of it except one. Very wise to say that. Part 2, the bull. But let's just go back to that part 1. Some of the wording is very bizarre, and the way that it's describing things is almost like though there are 3 people, it could possibly not be actually 3 people. And I know that sounds really, really strange, but I'm just going by the wording. So the second part is the bull. A young man once came to Erikúr and asked for his instruction in magic. "I don't know any magic, my pet," said Erikúr, "but you're welcome to stay overnight." The man accepted. This was in winter. During that long evening, the cleric approached that he would be a student. Yes, he could be a would-be student, and asked him to go tie his bull, which he said had broken loose. The young man assented, and took himself out to the cowshed. A long narrow corridor, which was only very dimly lit, led into it. He heard that the bull was indeed stomping around with angry noises. Nevertheless, the youth entered. But as soon as he was in the corridor, he saw two men who were standing up against the walls, one on either side of the corridor. Both were headless, and they were belabouring each other across the passageway with their bloody lungs. The sight greatly startled the young man, and he stumbled out backwards. Running to Erikúr, he declared the devil was loose in the cowshed, and he didn't care to get into his churches or his clutches, because the devil was there. "Well, my pet," said Erikúr, "you'll have to move on tomorrow then." Another man later sought Erikúr for the same purpose, and was put to the same test. That one was unfazed, saying only when he came upon the ghosts, "You go right on with your work, boys. I just have to squeeze in between you a moment." He then went on in and tied the bull without difficulty. Going back from the shed, he didn't see the ghosts anywhere, but he did see two wooden logs where the ghosts had been before. He returned to the house. Erikúr asked him, "Did you tether my bull, pet?" "Oh yes, I certainly did," said the other. "Didn't you see anything on your way?" said Erikúr. "Nothing worth mentioning," replied the other. Erikúr liked his answer so well that he accepted the man for instruction, which means he accepted to learn him more. And the last tale of Erikúr is the horse theft. The Reverend Erikúr cautioned both shepherds and other boys of Selvåger against taking his horses without permission, and warned that they would not fare well if they did. All shepherds, therefore, refrained from touching his mounts. Two boys, however, broke the ban, but as soon as they had mounted, the horses set off at a gallop, heading directly home to Vauxhall. The boys could not control them. Then, unable to rein in the horses, they tried to throw themselves off, but they couldn't do that either, for the pants were stuck to the horses' backs. "This is no good," one of them said. "We have to get off the horses, or else we'll get into Reverend's hands, and that's not an enviable place to be." Then he took a knife out of his pocket, cut the seat out of his pants, and thereby freed himself. But the other one either couldn't manage to do the same, or didn't dare destroy his trousers. The horses ran home, the Vauxhall, one with the screaming boy on his back, the other with the seat of his pants stuck to it. The cleric was outside when the horses arrived, brushing the piece of cloth from the unmanned horse. He said to the boy riding the other, "It's not much good stealing horses that belong to Erikúr, is it? Now get off, and never again take my horses without permission. Your companion was more resourceful. He deserves to be taught a letter or two, for that the making of a man." Some time afterward, the boy came. He came to Vauxhall. Erikúr then showed him the seat from the pants, asking if he recognized it. The lad did not flinch, and he told the parson the truth of what had happened. The cleric smiled. Then he offered the boy a place with him, which he gratefully accepted. He remained with the parson for a long, long time afterward, and he was very devoted to him. It is said that Erikúr taught him a great deal of his ancient law. The end. And those are the tales of Erikúr. Interesting indeed. I do like them though. They're really good stories. Interestingly put and interestingly worded. Almost to a point where they're slightly confusing at times, but I don't mind that. I don't mind it at all. It's quite interesting. Thank you for listening, and many blessings.